Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Backstory. Welcome to number 8 Backstory today. We're going to get to play a little bit with some of the things that the group's been saying. Kind of want to bring you up to date about things that they've been talking about and connections and things that are happening in the world that they've been talking about as well. Kind of bring you up to date again on things behind the scene, the backstory, if you will. So one of the first things is kind of an interesting piece because we just closed out doing a 3-day event that was a very powerful event. But one of the things that came up in that event was talking about animals. And one of the things they've said recently is that the animals are raising vibration the same way that we are, but they're showing different stress lines, different ways of incorporating it, difficulties that they're having other than what we typically have as humans. They also said that they're going to become a much more important part of our lives going forward. And if you have a domesticated animal, you're very liable to have deeper communications than you've ever had before. They're basically evolving very quickly right at this point. The entire spectrum of vibration that we call animal kingdom, because that's really what we were talking about in this event. We were talking about this was the future Earth event that was about the planet Earth, the future things that were going to happen with that, future humans, what's taking place with that, and also your place in space, in the cosmos, which things you were going to discover, things about the sun, the solar flares, all the rest of those things tied together. So that's the event we just finished up. And in that event, they talked about specific levels of animals. It basically said the animal kingdom is a very wide vibration, if you will. And up here, it's very fast, high moving. Down here, it's very low. So when we hit harmonies with things, that's when things are really magical. When we're raising our vibration and all of a sudden we can see something we've never seen before. It's because we basically rose to the level to where we hit a harmonic with whatever it is we're now seeing. There are several things that are taking place with that in the animal kingdom, and I don't mean the human part of the animal kingdom. I mean the lower parts of the animal kingdom. Now, the way the group puts it is a little bit different. I will tell you this is kind of an interesting way of looking at it. But what they basically say is that humans, of course, we believe we're at the top of the chain. We're not, which is why we talk to entities on the other side of the veil. But the reality is we believe that we are incarnate in the highest vibration of the animal kingdom, and we are. And the different levels of that simply mean that the next level down, now what would you think of? The biggest animals, the most successful, the oldest animals? I hope not, it's the cockroach. But basically, the idea is to where that is. Well, the group actually says the next level is your domesticated animals, because they are basically learning to be like you. They're watching everything you're doing, and are they actually going to be eventually stepping up into humanity? It's entirely possible. That is entirely possible. It is not something that's done on a regular basis up to this point. But the group says there's things changing very rapidly right now. And one of those is the connection and the actual communication that we have with the animals is changing and everything else. So if you are an animal lover, if you are a person who has connections and loves to connect with your animals, this is a really good time to do that. This is a great opportunity to increase that connection and allow them to ground you in ways that they can ground you and offer you things that you can't generally find on your own. So it's a really good time. In addition to that, they are moving vibrationally very fast right now, faster than the human element. The human element's kind of stalled right now. That portion of it isn't growing anything at all right now. We're just kind of in a stasis mode at the moment. But in the vibrational level, the lower vibrational levels and the very lower vibrational levels of the animal kingdom, which would be many of the wild animals that are basically have not moved away from survival as being the primary motivating factor. That's what humanity is doing, moving out of the lower vibrations of the third dimension, basically what that is. So we have opportunities to step up into a higher vibratory level, which is basically what we're doing. What we're doing with this Project Park Bench and the different things that we're doing in Lightmaster, all to take you to these higher vibrational levels so that you can experience them. And then when you come back down into your reality, your fifth dimensional reality, you start pulling in the highest vibration instead of the lower vibration. So a lot of the things that you're concerned about, a lot of things that seem to be, of grave concern right now, may not be as important in a fairly short time. It's important to keep that in mind. There's a lot of energy that's moving through everything right at this moment. And it's a good time to be here. Your space has been reserved, as the group says many times. So anyway, the animal kingdom is changing. That's one thing that they said just recently in that whole event. They talked a lot about what humans are going to look like. They said something very scary that may not be news to many of you, but they said by 2030, there will be a wide variety of people whose brains are automatically hooked up to the internet. Yeah, you've heard of Elon Musk's latest, well, it's not his latest crazy move, but he basically has been working with this Neurolink. Neurolink is an embed in the brain that basically allows people to hook into their brain and introduce different things, introduce vibrations, introduce healing, whatever it is they're going to introduce. It is only a matter of time before that is used. I mean, Facebook is standing in line trying to figure out how they're going to use these things right now. It's going to be a very interesting movement into this next level of technology, because that is one of the things that the group said is going to emerge, that we will have people. And in the beginning, there's plenty of reasons for doing that. You've got people who are paraplegic. You've got people who have a use of their arm or their leg or something of that nature, which can be corrected with this. So in many ways, it's a forward step in a lot of directions. Is it going to be misused? Is it going to be... The group isn't concerned about it being misused nearly as much as they are concerned about it being taken over by money. That is one of the biggest pieces that we've been talking about in this podcast, and I will continue talking about it because they continually show me that our election this year are about money versus the people. Now, this is not the first time that the group has said that about elections in the United States. They basically said, we've been deciding this for a long time, and most of the time, the money wins. What does that mean exactly? Is there some really super rich people behind the scenes controlling things? No, they're right out in the open controlling things. We have a challenge in the United States because we have laws that allow anyone to donate any amounts without having to be seen. So as long as that's taking place, people are always going to try and bribe the leader, try to make inroads by giving money, and that happens a lot right now. That's taking place in massive scales. But there's a lot going on with this whole process that we can share more about as we go forward and share with you a little bit of what the group is saying that is taking place, because there's a lot of things going on the planet right now. Yes, the United States has these elections on. I live in the United States. It's driving me crazy. I can't get news. I can't figure out what's taking place in the world because it's all taken up with these two. Yeah. Anyway, very frustrating, very frustrating. And unfortunately, a lot of it depends on it because the difference between those two choices is major. And I don't think people quite know that yet, so we'll see. One of the things the group has talked about reaching in our time right now is this pendulum swing. One of the pieces they talk about is that things get very popular. And we're a pendulum swinging back and forth. We swing a little bit this way, and then we swing a little bit that way. And when we reach this point where basically we can't swing anymore, it becomes resistant, becomes difficult, the whole thing moves over and it starts to swing all over again. So the fulcrum point of the lever actually moves and kind of goes down this ratchet, if you will. That's kind of the way they showed me how this whole thing works. Right now, we are seeing a huge swing in our world toward contrarianism. I'm just going to put it that way. In other words, if we know this to be a fact, there's going to be people over here that say it's not a fact, that it's made up or it's being controlled or it's an illusion or whatever. Basic contrarianism has become extremely popular and very profitable on planet Earth, not just in the United States, but globally. You're seeing it take place all over the place. Part of the challenge with this is that our technology is moving so fast that most people, whether they like it or not, they get much of their news and their connections from social media or whatever they happen to be watching online at the time. It becomes very challenging because all these central places where news is really vetted, really gone through to make sure they're reporting the right things are, of course, today being called fake news. So everything is up in the air. And everybody's vying for your information because when you're on the internet and you get something for free, you're the product because you're giving them their information. And they use that information and they sell it. And it happens. That is the business model in today's world. Why do they sell it? Because people can buy that information. They know a lot about you. They put you in this little category, they call it. And then it's called a basket. They put you in this basket with other people like you, no matter where they live, and other people like you, and then they can advertise things to that basket. And it works because they know what you like. You've told them many times by buying things. Remember all the places you used to have that would, what would they do? They'd give you money back if you sent them your receipt. Well, guess what? They're writing down exactly what you purchased. You are the product. And they're selling that information back to these manufacturers and people that really want to know, who do I sell this product to? What does that look like? Who's in that basket with this one person? So that's kind of the business model that's taken over in a lot of ways. And it's also allowed for the division, which of course is being propagated by political parties, by countries that want to take over other countries, things of that nature. Happening a lot on planet Earth right now. So there's a lot of things going on. By the way, you may, for those of you who are watching the video, there is a moon behind me. Not just a moon, but the dark side of the moon. China has just put a spaceship on the dark side of the moon for the first time. So congratulations. We hope that brings back lots of moonstones, lots of information. Every time we go out into the universe for something, we come back with information. Groups talked about it with the James Webb Telescope. Many of the things that have taken place as like we said, we finished this seminar that we've just did. We talked a lot about our position in the globe, not just the globe, but where we are as an exercise in humanity. And are we alone? Are we not? What does that look like on the larger scale? And that was really interesting too, to be able to cover all that stuff from the group. Okay, next one. The group has been bringing up information a lot lately. You'll be hearing more about this, about being able to affect I'm just going to call it energy, because that's the word that they use. When we first wrote the very first book, remember, from the group, they used a word called universal energy. 2 words, sorry. Universal energy. They said you live in a sea of universal energy. And when anyone moves in that energy, everyone else can feel it. Now, you've learned to not feel it. You've learned to ignore all the movement because it's exhausting. But the reality is we live in this sea of energy. Now, there's a lot of things you can call with that. Nikola Tesla himself talked about the fact that there was so much energy in the universe around us. Once we discovered it, because he was quite hopeful we would, he basically said, once humanity discovers that energy, you'll never have to use fossil fuels again. And we'll never have to use that type of thing. And furthermore, it will be the free energy which he envisioned with his Wardenclyffe experiment that he, built that big thing that the funding got pulled before he's a very, very brilliant man, but not a businessman. He was going to give away all this electricity, but didn't know how to pay for it. So, yeah. So, in other words, it wouldn't have been free energy anyway, but it would have been free distribution of energy. So, anyway, lots of interesting things that took place with that. But in this energy, now let me give you two other quick equations since we're talking about this. Our sciences today are wrestling with two very important things. Number one, they know that everything is held together. They know that the universe exists in a substrate, or in other words, in something. They know that causes the formation of the galaxies. They know that it causes the ends of the universe, so to speak, and the definition around that. But they don't know what it is. It's not measurable. It's been called dark matter, and it makes up probably about 70% of the universe. Most people think it's just space, but it's actually dark matter. So in other words, there's something there. Now, when you relieve yourself from the gravitational pull of planet Earth and you get into space, it doesn't feel like you have any resistance at all. You do, but it's greatly, greatly reduced. So the density factor of being here on the planet in a field of gravitational pull and a mass pull and being up there are quite different. And yet that is all dark matter as well. Now, on top of that, you've got another interesting equation that's taken place. We've all grown up thinking about the Big Bang as the beginning of the universe. That is starting to change. There's a lot of challenges with the Big Bang that James Webb Telescope is now discovering. And some of this is very readily available. They're coming up with some very interesting things like saying time is an illusion. Same things the group has been saying for a long time. So anyway, they're starting to, connect a lot of different things and see things from a different perspective. And one of the perspectives that they found out, it's been a few years before the James Webb Telescope, but one of the things they found out is that if the Big Bang were to happen, these stars that we're observing are going to continue to get further and further apart. And they are. But two gentlemen won the Nobel Prize in science by discovering that they were moving away at a faster pace, not a slower pace. So in other words, they're speeding up. The universe is speeding up, not slowing down as it is expanding. Now, that's contrary to most what we call Newtonian physics, or our idea of normal physics. It's quite contrary to that. That is being called dark energy. What is making that move is called dark energy. It is measured. The effects of it are measurable, but nobody's ever been able to measure it. Now that I've described those two scientific evaluations, let me tell you the group's perspective. They blend both of those together. And they basically say, well, they're both part of each other. You draw the energy part over here, and you draw it's not mass. So I can't say that it's mass, but there's another aspect of it over here. All of it blends together from their perspective. They call it the universal energy. And they say our relationship to the universal energy, the same way that the animals are moving, humans are moving as well. Very quickly right now. We're very distracted by all the crazy things taking place, all the technical advances, AI coming in, quantum computing right behind it, robotics coming in a very big way. the planet in front of you is going to change. No doubt about it. Brace yourself. Get ready to move. Get ready to evaluate new things. Get ready to see what works for you in some of these areas. Because it is definitely going to be affecting every human on planet Earth. Now, there's also going to be the pendulum swing, where people start trying to find a more commonality having to do with where they get their news, where they find things, where they trust things, when they start to see that some of these people are simply saying things to make money. Again, the money versus the people. Now, all of us on Earth deal with money. So we make those choices all the time. We have to make those choices all the time. Sometimes you even work in a job that you're not crazy about. Hopefully, not one that you hate, because that will cut your life short and your light short. But if you're working in a job, let's just say, oh, I got to go to work today. I really don't want to do it, but okay, I'll go to work. It's a good job. Why do you go? You go because they're paying you money, because it gives you the money to do the things you want on the weekends, because it gives you the money to support yourself and live the way that you want to live. So there is a trade-off, and don't think that money is the only decisive factor or that it is a bad factor. But ladies and gentlemen, these elections are all about money versus people. The interesting part about it is that, there's a lot of interesting things that are taking place. I don't want to get too much into politics right now because it's not important. We can step higher and see the higher aspect of all of this and see where the possibilities are of what where your next steps are. And I say that completely open, where humanity wants to step next. With that, we have a new relationship with the universal energy. One of the ways that this is going to show up right away is through music. Music is liable to take one of these turns. If you go back in history, you can hear the difference between classical and Baroque. You can hear the difference today between country western and hip-hop. You can hear the difference between the 70s and the 80s. Literally, you can hear a difference in the flavor of the collective vibration of humanity as expressed through music. And occasionally, you see huge moves. Such was the case with hip-hop, with rap. Huge move, major change, a lot of resistance. But the reality is, as much as I personally didn't like it, the reality is the group reminded me, they said, it's just rhythm. It's rhythm without the singing. It's basically speaking a rhythm, which Ilra loves. So anyway, there's always the other side, isn't it? So anyway, that was an interesting way to look at things. But it was a huge move. It was like one day we woke up and all of a sudden we were doing this. And I'm sure that my parents felt that. They were into Mitch Miller and people I don't even remember, and basically all of a sudden we had Elvis Presley, we had the Beatles, and we had so crazy times and crazy changes. We are about to experience one of those changes right now, and it's generally going to start with music. That's what the group is saying right now. Sorry, I've got something. They say basically it'll start in the areas of music. You will start to see changes in the way you relate to music, the way you express it, probably even some technological changes that'll come with that. I can't quite tell, but that is one of the areas of change that we're all looking at right now to try and see what's taking place. Okay, long story short, right? Okay, here we go. A couple of other things. We've talked about being under attack on the internet. If you have not seen evidence of that, you're not looking very far. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. We actually got locked out of our Facebook account. I don't know if we'll be back in by the time this airs or not. Someone hacked into our account and apparently did some things that they weren't supposed to do, and we got locked out. And we're supposed to appeal it, but there's no way to appeal it. I'm pretty convinced that nobody actually works at Facebook except for programmers, people that don't like to talk to humans, because every time I get an email, it says exactly the same thing word for word. So you know it's all being directed by automation. So anyway, we're probably going to have to move away from our Facebook in general if it doesn't happen, or hire a PR firm, which is what people do now. It's all over the internet, this problem they're having. One of the problems Facebook is having is that they got hacked, and over 1 million people got their login information and their passwords and other information stolen. I don't know what the other information is. It wasn't specific, but it basically said other information. I don't think it was payment information. Generally, that's kept in a totally different space, in a totally disconnected space. It's the idea. In other words, you wouldn't find a person's name and their number in the same location. So anyway, that's pretty much what's taken place with Facebook. They are going crazy right now. I don't know if you've ever tried to follow any instructions on Facebook, but if you type in instructions, it says just do this and then do this and then do this. And you go there to do this, and this thing that they tell you to look for isn't there. I'm convinced that one of the reasons that they are as big as they are is because you cannot delete an account. You can walk away from it, but you can't delete it. It's really frustrating. Anyway, a lot of things going on with Facebook. I did want to tell you they were hacked. Over 1 million Facebook people their information was stolen, including their Facebook logins, their passwords, so forth, to be able to do that. A lot of this one particularly showed up on the dark web right away, which is unusual. Usually it takes a little time to kind of work its way into the dark web to where your credit card information or your information is being sold in some way. But I did want to tell you about that. Now, one other thing we want to talk about here real quick before we get to the final subject of today is I want to do a quick update on what is taking place on the financial situations of planet Earth from the group's perspective. Well, basically, we're creator beings. And when we get busy with something, we don't pay much attention to other things. And that has been the case a lot here in the United States. As I mentioned, it's very difficult for me to actually turn on the news or see something without going through a whole bunch of political stuff, and it's a nightmare. So anyway, it's very difficult to find things that you're looking for and to be able to connect. But I will tell you that the finances on planet Earth will tend to just kind of scoot along until some of these things happen, particularly our election here in November. We'll be able to kind of get back into focusing in the world. And I don't just mean our attention on the news. I mean our attention as a collective of people. Here in the United States, you can't help but focus on some of this crazy stuff that's going on. So anyway, with that in mind, that is one of the things that's going to happen. It's going to kind of skate along. There is a point, in my estimation, in this last meeting of the Fed, they should have lowered interest rates a small amount. They did not do so. And what we're starting to see in the real estate market is a degrading of home values. Now, that might be the trigger they need. That doesn't typically happen in the United States right away. But that is actually happening. And it's slowly starting to degrade because of the fact that interest rates are still high. It's still difficult for people to get financing if they want to buy a home. It's very difficult for people to get into the market that aren't already in the market, first-time home buyers, et cetera, et cetera. Very challenging. We still see a lot of weakness. And I will tell you that from the group's perspective, we are on the edge of a collapse. But it's going to take that nudge from something to start the collapse. And right now we're not being nudged. It's real simple. Things are going along. They're smoothing along. We're crazy. We're doing this crazy political thing. It's taking all this attention. Supreme Court's doing this. The other things are doing. Yeah, it's crazy. So with all that distraction, things are going to scoot along for a little bit, but you're right on the edge. And with that, you're liable to see things take a different turn. Now, there's also something that's liable to turn it for you. And that is what's going on in the rest of the world. I'll put it that way. Well, we'll talk about Mr. Putin because it's mainly his move that is going to be changing a lot of things. As we mentioned previously when we talked about the hacking and all the war basically moving online, it has become a really big deal to be able to fine-tune it and hack into things. We saw here in Las Vegas a gentleman by the name of Sheldon Adelson. He's since passed away, but he's the owner of the Sands Hotels and the Venetian. And he made some very disparaging comments on television about Iran and about wanting to simply blow it up with a big atom bomb and be done with it. And a short time after that, they took $40 million out of his pocket by shutting down his casino. They basically hacked into his systems and changed things and altered it for almost a week and a half. They didn't let anybody on the outside know they were going through it. They kept going through things, but they lost money right and left because of losing control of things. They had to constantly try to bring things back in. That is one of the ways that a war is being waged. On top of that, we told you China has been deep into the systems of the United States. And it was found out. They've said it's been removed. It hasn't. It's still partly there. And most of it is benign. They're just looking. But they want to be in the critical points to tap into somebody's electrical system, to tap into somebody's internet system, to tap into their communication systems. Those are critical things if you were going to go to war. I'm telling you, people are preparing to go to war. And China is one of them. China is prepared to go ahead and do whatever they want to do to make their one China policy, which basically means that they own it all, including Taiwan, that they basically want to take it back over, and they don't want any resistance from anybody. That's their part of the world. They want to close off the China Straits. They want to do a lot of things on their own. Okay, so you can sort of see that, but they're also going to be pretty aggressive about it. Now, in Russia, it's all aggression. That's what you're seeing. Now you've seen some other things take place. You're going to see Korean warriors, North Korean warriors, inside of some of the war places that are taking place on this planet. You're going to see some connections between Putin's Russia and his armies. You're going to see the Ukraine at the brunt of it all right now. You're going to see a lot of other challenges taking place. Mr. Putin has done a couple of different things that people need to be aware of if you're not. Number one, he's made friends with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. And he's traded him things. He's traded him long-range technology, missile technology, along with nuclear weapons, which Kim Jong-un sorely wants. Traded him those two things in exchange for basically soldiers to help fight his wars and to help him move back to this new world order, which he believes he is going to run everything. That's one of the things that is taking place. The group has been talking about this gentleman for at least 15 years. At least 15 years. He wants to put the Soviet Union back together again, and he's willing to do it by force. It's that simple. That is his goal. It's always been his goal. He's working with Ukraine right now. He is definitely not going to stop there, especially if he can degrade NATO. Now, on top of this is very negative information, but we want to tell you about it. We made people aware, especially the Lightmasters, aware of what was going on more than a year before when they started amassing arms and soldiers on the borders of Ukraine. We told people about it. We said this is going to be a really big thing. It's going to be a consistent march forward, and it will. In the meantime, he's changed things. He's getting people on board now. North Korea's on board with him. so is China at arm's length. They're not completely on board with him. They don't want to be completely understood when connected with him at this point, but they have also been working through the United States to be able to degrade it for other reasons. Okay? And this happens all the time. The United States are the ones who started online cyber hacking. So we can't say that, we can't say that it's illegal or not. Of course it's illegal. There's all kinds of laws against it. And yet we do it to other countries all the time. So that has been what's going on with that. But on top of that, there's one other thing that's taken place. Two other things. And Mr. Putin loves to put on a good show. And we hope that that's exactly what this is. But he's aligned a couple of things that are important to point out. Number one, he's parked a huge nuclear submarine in Cuba. Well, that was exactly what the Cuban Missile Crisis was about. And he just put it there, along with some very important warships that are now parked in Cuba right off the coast of Florida, not that far down. So those are sitting there. At the same time, don't know if you're aware of it or not, but if you've ever seen pictures of planet Earth with the low space realms, what that means is that when you go out into orbit, you've got the high orbits, which are very far away from planet Earth, and you've got the low orbits just outside of the gravitational field. And most of them still have a little gravitational pull. Their orbits have to be corrected every year or 6 months or whatever it is. But so they're just outside, but that's considered to be the low orbital range. Those are the ranges that our communication satellites are in, all of them. Elon Musk has been peppering the sky with these Skylink satellites. He had a situation not too long ago where a bunch of them were wiped out because of I don't know whether it was a solar storm or an explosion or what, but a bunch of them were wiped out very quickly. Well, Mr. Putin has just put a nuclear device in that area of lower space. If he wants to take out the internet, if he wants to take out your cell phone service, he can do it. He ignites that nuclear device. It wipes out a huge portion of everything, probably including the International Space Station, but several things that are in there to be able to do that. I don't know the details of all that and where that is, but I do know that just recently he launched a nuclear device to low space orbit, which is exactly where all the communication satellites are. Hang on. We need to be aware. We don't need to be fearful about it or anything else. But if we are aware, if our eyes are not open, we cannot walk forward without stumbling. So let's open our eyes and see what's going on in there. Some of you may have an effect with this. Some of you may not. Most will not. But nonetheless, as light workers on planet Earth, we need to become aware of where the weak spots are, of where things are heading, so that we can be in the right position to make a difference, that we can be in the right position to hold hands, to create something magical in that aspect, to be able to bring the higher vibrational levels to planet Earth right away, and to live in them, rather than get stuck in a third-dimensional reality. Okay, that's the essence of what I wanted to bring you up to date with the group. We will be back in another couple of weeks with another episode of The Backstory. We're going to start doing some interviews a little further down the road, too. There's some interesting people I think you'd very much love to hear from, so we'll try to bring in some different aspects of that to show you different views. Also, if you haven't seen it, the Park Bench Project starts on July 14th. Please come join us. Jim Self and I are doing an incredible job of trying to create a space for everybody to kind of retreat to for a little bit, to get a higher vibration of the new planet Earth, to get our imprints, to reset our energy. And it's all free. Come join us. Aspav, everybody.